It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down. It's like a loop machine.
Welcome back to the BCSN SportsWrap. Joining us today on the Versus Sports Simulator hotline is going to be Alvin Parker, Ph.D. Alvin Parker, Dr. Parker, head coach, Virginia Union University, in his second season there at Virginia Union University. Last season, in his inaugural season, they won 8 games, and this year they're off to another fantastic start. And Virginia Union happens to be number 2 in our BCSN poll, and they face number 1 Bowie State this Saturday. So, Coach, how's it going thus far? How's practice been going for you this week?
Everything's been going good. No complaints. Tuesday is pretty much our work day, so we was able to get a good Tuesday practice in yesterday, and we're looking forward to a good practice today.
All right, and Coach, going back over your victory last weekend, just give us a brief rundown of your victory last weekend, a couple of the keys that were able to turn that game in your favor this past weekend.
Coming into the game, we knew that Juwan would be a tough opponent. I think a lot of people looked at their record and thought that, maybe, they were not as tough as they were, but they presented challenges to everyone they've played this season. So I'm glad we was able to come out of that thing with the victory. But I think we made a couple errors early on in the game. We got in the hole 14-0. And I think our kids showed a bunch of resiliency, just fighting out of it and playing up to the level we know we can play. And in the second half, we came out and we focused up a little bit more, and we did some things good, and we was able to kind of get that thing to swing in our favor.
Now, Juwan went through a coaching change this week, right before your game. We're not going to get into the speculation of what's and the whys, and I've always got the rule and never ask another coach to talk about another coach's job. But just in general, that's the second coaching change that has occurred in your conference this season. Just kind of, as a coach, kind of go through that. How do you feel about mid-season coaches changes? What do you think the effects may be on the players for those 2 programs at St. Augustine and Chowan, on the other coaches that remain? And just kind of hit on that with coaching changes like that occur mid-season.
First and foremost, I'm as a coach, I'm definitely not for any mid-season changes. Sometimes the administration might see some things a little differently, but I think the best thing, for the student athletes is kind of, to keep the consistency that they might have, with the coach that they have in place. After the season, decisions have to be made most of the time, but, I think during the season it's kind of tough to kind of do that. But I think as long as the decisions are being made solely based on the student athletes, whatever decisions that, the administration and they, everybody else, the powers that be, come up with, I think it'll be a good thing, but, you got to make sure you look out for the student athletes first, and not necessarily speculating on any one of the situations that's happened in our conference, because I know both of those guys, and I know both of them are great coaches, and I know both of them run, good programs. So, any times that, you make a change like that, it's always kind of, mind-boggling a little bit. But, I'm sure that the administration feel like most of the time they have the student-athlete's best interests at heart. And as long as it stays right there in that pocket, I think it'll be a good thing and it can work out.
All right, great, Coach. In general, just talk about your season thus far. You come in with 1 loss on the season. That being to Lenore Ryan, I do believe, in week 2 of the season. You've got a big victory over rival Hampton earlier this season. I believe that was in your opening weekend. So just kind of talk about your season thus far, Coach.
It's been a good ride thus far. I think coming into the season, what we did was, we made sure that we had a quote unquote a tougher schedule, than we per se did last year. We added an FCS opponent in Hampton, onto it, and we added a program that went real deep into the playoffs last year in the Lorraine. So those were our first 2 games. So we came out of the gate kind of smoking. And not to mention all of the teams that we had, that were in the CIAA that were much improved or just as good as they were, last year. So we felt like we faced a tough one thus far, and to be in this thing sitting 6-1, it's pretty good. Of course, always one shot you go because there's no coach out there that's going to say they don't want to be undefeated, but we made sure the schedule was a little tougher. So coming into it, our kids had a different type of mindset because they knew the pressure was going to be on them. Just kind of coming back off of last season and finishing 8-2 and not necessarily getting a nod for the playoffs. One of the things in conversation that came up was strength of schedule. They said the team that beat us out for the last spot, had a better strength of schedule. So we wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be any questions, there wasn't going to be a point of emphasis this year in terms of somebody having a stronger schedule than we did. So we made sure we go out there. We went out and found the best opponents we could to play.
Yes, and speaking of that schedule, you have a very strong division schedule with 2 formidable opponents, that being Virginia State and Bowie in the Northern Division of the CIAA, along with yourself, and then going out and scheduling a regional matchup with Lenore-Rhine. Those should, hopefully, with victories in those games and good showings in those games, should be able to put you over the top, and hopefully maybe the CIAA may be lucky this year to get an additional team into the Division II playoffs, as you were on the outside looking in last year along with Albany State within your region, and Albany State being in the SIAC. But I remember looking at that last week, going into the last week of the season, with yourself, Bowie, and Albany State and Fayetteville State all ranked in the top 10 of the region, praying and hoping that there would be 2, if not 3, HBCUs that would get into the playoffs. Bowie State obviously was the only one that got in and had a good run for those couple of rounds that they were in. So, and that's also going to help because Bowie just was not there. They actually won a game in the playoffs. So, those are the type of things that boost the strength of schedule. But I'm talking to the president of the CIAA Coaches Association. He knows all that stuff that I'm talking about. So, talking about those things from last year, what were some of the expectations from the media and from yourself and your team that you put on coming into the season after a very successful 8-win season last year?
Well, the expectations that were set by so many others, they were pretty high, but at the end of the day, I think the expectations that we set for ourselves as a team were a little bit higher. So again, coming out of it last year, the expectation level was to kind of, meet or exceed what we did the year before, So, I think the kids are playing much better ball right now, and they're playing, just more tight and cohesive as a unit. A lot of things that people might see us play, are a lot better probably from last year, and I thought we were a good team from last year. But in terms of the expectations, all the ones that have been kind of set by everybody else, it's been something that's been pretty good. But again, things that have been kind of in-house that we've kind of talked about and set for ourselves have been a little higher, and our guys have responded. And that's the biggest thing that you want to see from your ball club when it starts to get into that later October type of, time of the season. You want to see your ball club respond in a certain way. We responded. We stayed relatively healthy thanks to our health staff. Those type of things has kind of gotten us where we are right now. So I think in terms of our expectations, we was to be undefeated at this point. You can't really set anything lower than that. We're probably one off of that. But again, our kids are playing well. Our coaches are coaching great, and it's kind of leading us up to what's coming this weekend.
Speaking of health and the season, one thing that I noticed, most Division II teams are playing 10, 11 consecutive weeks in the for the regular season with no bye weeks. There's been the big push from the NCAA and other organizations with concussions and letting the body heal and, all the things that are related to that. But we look at a schedule where 90% of Division II teams are playing those 10 or 11 consecutive weeks without a bye. You're looking to make a playoff run, and obviously if you're looking to make a playoff run, you're looking to make a deep playoff run, which would mean 15, possibly 16 consecutive weeks of football. So my question is, talk about just that compressed schedule, not having built-in bye weeks, number one, and then number two, how do you plan? How do you keep the focus? How do you keep players healthy for 11, 12, 14, 15 consecutive weeks, Coach?
It's tough. First off, it's tough. I think the big boys, they have, in terms of big boys, I mean, like the FBS and things like that, FCS, they have, a couple more scholarships, so they're going to have a couple more players in there. That's going to be first one. And then they'll get a bye to kind of give them guys, that need a rest during the season. When you come down to the Division II level, it's not going to be as many scholarships. You're not going to really get that built-in bye a lot of times because, the way the season is kind of formatted. So I think from a coaching standpoint, you got to make sure you're practicing a certain way, because, putting that much wear and tear on the guys' bodies is always going to be tough. I think last year what helped us out, was although we did not per se have a bye, we ended up getting a bye with the hurricane week. And that kind of happened closer to the middle of all season. We had a hurricane come through and they canceled the game that we ended up playing on the backside of the schedule. That helped, because it kind of gave the guys a small bit of a break, almost 2 weeks without being in, serious game type of contact, and it helped, but it's some things that you have to sacrifice to have that bye week. We play a conference championship, and it's something that I think is pretty good. So the teams in Division II that are able to get a bye don't have a conference championship. So, to sacrifice that for that, it'll be kind of tough to say, but I think we have to find a way to do both, and that's something that, myself and probably some of the other coaches in the league and some of the other coaches on the Division II, side of things with the AFCA have to kind of come up with to kind of do something that's going to kind of help the student athletes out. It's not necessarily something to help the coaches out or to give anybody an extra advantage, but it's something that can kind of help out, the student athletes that's kind of going out there putting it on the line every day.
Yeah, the CIAA is one of about 4 or 5 Division II conferences that have a championship game, whereas most Division II conferences play a true round robin. But most conferences do not have the number of teams the CIAA has with their 12 football playing schools that they have in their conference. And we're talking about the CIAA conference. The CIAA, let's be realistic, Coach. The CIAA is known for basketball. It is a basketball conference. It is probably the premier basketball conference for HBCUs, and that's on Division I or Division II level, and is very competitive in basketball on the Division II level with teams that traditionally go deep into the playoffs. But you're a football coach. I need you to talk about this conference and sell this conference on the gridiron, Coach, for me.
If you look up and you look at our conference in terms of just right now, just going off of things, from today, we got a bunch of good teams. We have the only undefeated team in HBCU in the Bowie State. You have a couple, 6-win teams. You have a couple 5-win teams. And that's kind of hard to say just with one conference. Not necessarily in our region, but just, as a whole in NCAA Division II. I think the coaches are doing a great job. We have a great group of coaches in this league, and they do a great job with their teams. All of us are kind of, aiming to compete. I think when one raises their level, the other one does too, because, we all have to compete against one another. And the coaches have done a great job putting together these good teams. And now you can kind of see by looking at the records and things like that these teams have. So in terms of, it being, a basketball conference, that's something that the legacy was kind of built on, a long time ago, and it's been carrying through. But I think football is really coming through, making its mark. it's been some years, some other schools I've been at in the CIAA, we've gotten 2 teams in the playoffs. A couple years ago, we got 2 teams in the playoffs. Hopefully this year we can get 2 or maybe even more teams in the playoffs. It's just kind of one of those type of things. I think we deserve it. We've shown that, we can compete with anybody. And it's one of those things that, you want to take your hat off to all the coaches in the league for making sure, they're doing their part and getting their teams ready, on a week in and week out basis.
And those teams that are in good shape out of the CIAA in the Northern Division, you've got Virginia Union, Virginia State, and Bowie. And down in the Southern Division, you have Fayetteville State, all with, when regional rankings come out, should garner some votes and be ranked regionally. But speaking of rankings and polls and all that good stuff, coaches say they don't pay attention to polls, but the fans pay attention to polls. The fans always want to know why you're not number 1, why are you number 2, But just kind of talk about that, because we know Bowie State's getting a lot of votes on the national level, and when the regional rankings come out, we know they're going to be ranked. You're not getting quite the love that a Bowie State is. You're getting a couple of what I like to call honorable mention votes on the national level. Once again, we're still waiting on the regional rankings. But when you look at the computer ratings, the computer ratings sometimes tell a totally different story than the human polls. So just kind of talk about that from a coach's point of view.
Like you said, it's kind of impossible not to pay attention to it and kind of see it. It's a thing that I think our kids get a lot out of. So this week, we were able to get into the top 25 in the American Football Coaches Association poll, so that's pretty good. So, our team versus Bowie will be the only top 25 matchup this week. Then in you guys poll, you guys show us a bunch of love, week in and week out. So it'll be the number one team going versus the number 2 team. So it's a good thing because it helps out in things like recruiting, a lot of the off-field aspect, not necessarily the things that's going to make a difference in the game, so to speak, but in terms of just kind of garnering some of the attention that you need for your program. This thing called recruiting out here nowadays is something these kids pay attention to, pretty heavy. So everybody wants to be involved with a top 25 team. Everybody wants to be involved with a ranked team and things like that. So it helps out in those facets because, again, the people that's outside looking in pay attention to so much of it. And it kind of shows what other people think about your program. Again, when a couple polls came out this week, they were kind of furnished to me and things like that. And I seen that we were ranked, top 25 in 2 polls this week. And that's something, again, it's good, because your kids want to feel good about themselves. And then, we had about maybe 40 to 50 recruits on campus this past weekend. And them kids get to see that this week. And it's something that can kind of swing some things in our favor. So, it helps. I'm not going to sit here and say it does not. It helps. And it helps in the ways that, people necessarily don't see. I think the fans look at it, and they may say, well, my team is better than this team, or this team is better than that team. It's good for them. But in terms of program-wise, it helps us out in more ways than people think it does.
Speaking of teams, one team being better than the other team, we're going to solve who's going to be our number 1 team going into next week's poll in the BCSN poll right on the gridiron. That game is going to occur this Saturday, where we have Virginia Union versus Bowie State, Bulldog Stadium, 1 p.m. kick. Coach, when I look at the game on Saturday and pick up the stat sheet at the end of the game, what are those 1 or 2 things that you think I need to look for if Virginia Union does A and B or 1, 2, and 3? They're going to win this game this Saturday.
I think we're going to have to do things like not turn the ball over. I think we're definitely going to have to win the kicking game, and I think we're going to have to, play solid and not make the mistakes, in terms of penalties and other things like that. Those are going to be like the small things. I think you got to, you're going to have to win to make sure. And that's both teams, I believe. That's not necessarily just our keys to the game. I think when you get into these type of matchups, it's going to be all those same things that's going to rely on who's going to win the type of ball game like this. And Bowie State has a great ball club. They're the defending champs. They, the team that made the noise in the playoffs last year from our conference. We all were cheering for them at that point. So, they got a good ball club, great coaching staff. I respect what Coach Wilson is up there doing. And he's putting together a great program. On the flip side of that, I think we're doing a lot of those things down this way too. We got a great ball club. We have a great coaching staff. We're doing some things on the national level. So, it's going to be a clash. It's going to be good, for a whole. It's going to be good for the region. It's going to be good for the two universities. It's going to be good for HBCU as a whole, to kind of get these type of games, So we're excited. We're happy. We're going to pack our bus on Friday, head on up to Bowie, and look forward to a great ball game.
Yes, and then for those HBCU fans, this is one of about 4 great matchups this weekend, not only in the CIAA, but in all of the traditional conferences. Each conference schedule you can look at and find that one matchup that's just like sticks out and head and shoulders above everybody else. And the Bowie State Virginia Union game will be the BCSN versus game of the week. So we will get deep into it on our pregame show and our weekly preview this week. Coach, last year's team featured a guy, I can't remember his name, something about Hall, Amir maybe. But seriously, and they were pretty much a very pass reliant team. This year, Mr. Jerome Johnson has featured his feet a lot more than Mr. Hall did. So obviously there's a little bit of a change in style. Your team features a heavier running game and is built on good defense. Just kind of talk about those clashing styles and the kind of the differences from what you've seen in the past from a Bowie State to what you expect to see from them this year.
Well, I think, mentalities of both teams are pretty much the same. We both want to move the ball. We both want to play strong defense and things like that. But I think we both are doing it a little different than we probably did a year ago. I think last year at this time in the season we were leading the league in rushing, and they were leading it in passing. I think we come into it this year it's the total opposite. We lead the league in passing, and I believe they lead the league in rushing. So I think we both have found, that goes back to what I just said before, 2 great coaching staffs and kind of putting together, enough to get their guys a chance to win. So I think, both of us have the same mentalities, but in terms of style, it can change up either which way, just like it's changed up this year. So it's tough to say, kind of what's going to be what. I think they do a good job of moving the ball. I think they do a good job of playing defense, and again, we do the same, so it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be one of those type of games that, some of those key things like turnovers and conversions on third downs and things like that are going to play a huge factor in how this game plays out.
All right. I know your staff. I know your roster. For the average fan out there, give me a player or two on both sides of the ball for Virginia Union that they need to watch out for in this particular game.
I mean, you look at the number. We have a pretty good quarterback. We have a couple good offensive linemen up front. We have Tobias Taylor, who's a preseason All-American. We have Sterling Hammond, who's a preseason All-American. We have a bunch of guys that can kind of get it done, for us all over the field. And we have a bunch of guys on that are specialty type guys, Jefferson Souza and some other guys that, again, that have proven, their worth in this league and, and in Division II as a whole.
Yeah. Well, the advantage you have is Jefferson Souza, because if this game comes down to as close as most people think, that may be the one advantage that you have over Bowie State with the excellent kicker that you have there. So before we get out of here, Coach, I always like to open it up and ask you, is there anything that I did not cover that you want to bring out, and whether you want to sell your program, whether you want to sell your university, the floor is yours now, Coach.
Nothing really. I just, thank you guys for what you do down there. You guys are doing a great job of just covering, HBCUs as a whole and kind of, giving us that voice and that thing that we need. Giving coaches and some of these programs an opportunity to be spotlighted. That's always a great thing. Just hats off to you guys, and I really appreciate it, man. And I just need you guys to cover this thing on Saturday, like you've been doing, and hey, let the world see it.
Yeah, well, we will break that video down. Myself, I will be on the Albany State, Savannah State matchup in the SIAC. My colleague Brian Fulford will be covering the South Carolina State Bethune game. So, like I said, there were just too many matchups this particular week to be able to get up there and catch a flight up to the Baltimore area and drive over to Bowie, but I wish I could have. Once again, we've been talking with Dr. Alvin Parker, head coach, Virginia Union University. Coach, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I appreciate you joining us here on the Versus Sports Simulator Hotline. Good luck this weekend, and, we're going to look forward to talking to you at a later point in time in this season.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Coach.
It's like a loot machine.